Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Dai, and today I am bringing you some manga recommendations for mystery readers. So as some of you know, I am a host for March Mystery Madness, which is a month-long reading event where we promote the reading of mysteries throughout the month of March. I have been a host for this reading event for 6 out of its 7 years. I've also participated in all 7 years. And I thought that it might be time for me to put out a recommendations video for March Mystery Madness. I know there are a lot of people just discovering manga, and there are also a lot of people that may be interested in trying manga out but don't know where to start. And so I know there are a lot of recommendation type videos out, so definitely check out some of those. There are different ones available if you're interested in other recommendations, but the titles that I want to talk to you about today all have some kind of mystery element to it. And because during March Mystery Madness we talk about mysteries, I thought this would be a good time to talk about these series. So I do have 5 series to talk to you about today, so let's just get started. The first of these series that I want to talk to you about, I just recently read, and that is A School Frozen in Time. This has art by Naoshi Arakawa, story by Mizuki Tsujimura. This one is published by Vertical and is rated ages 16 plus, which is older teen. In this series, we follow a group of friends on their way to school after the school had been closed because one of their classmates had committed suicide from jumping off of one of the school buildings during a school festival. So right off the top there is a theme of suicide in this series, just so you know. But once the friends get to the school, they realize that nobody else is around. So at first they think maybe the school was closed for a holiday or there's something else going on that they just weren't notified about. But then they realize that they are unable to get out of the school. They cannot leave. And so as they're talking to each other, they come to realize that they all know that somebody had killed themselves at school, but they don't remember who it is. So as time clicks by, they start to think that maybe the way out is to figure out and remember who it was that committed suicide. So this series follows this group of friends trying to figure out who it was in their class that killed themselves and if it was one of them. I just read this one at the end of February, so I'll just give you some brief thoughts here because I do talk about it more extensively in my wrap-up. So if you want more of my specific thoughts on this title, definitely check out my wrap-up for February. But I really enjoyed this one. I did read the volumes all in one sitting. So this is a 4-volume series. It is complete in 4 volumes. And I am really glad that I did that because there are a lot of little tidbits that you're given. And I think if I had read these volumes as they were released, I wouldn't have picked up so much on the little tidbits to be able to string everything together and figure things out. I did figure out which student it was that killed themselves before it was revealed, but there were a lot of twists and turns that were offered in this story that made the story, after I had figured out who it was, really enjoyable still for me and kept my interest. A lot of times when I'm able to figure out things early in mysteries, it's a waiting game for me and nothing is usually as interesting to keep my interest throughout the rest of the book until the final reveal is actually made. But with this story, I definitely had that element where things were still being offered past the point they reveal which student it was. And so I really appreciated that. We also get a lot of kind of glimpses into the students that we meet and what they're going through, what their home life is, and things like that. So it does offer that element of guessing to try to figure out yourself which student it might have been that had committed suicide. So I definitely recommend this series, especially since it is so short and only 4 volumes. And it is a newer release, so the last volume in this series just came out in December 2021. So I definitely recommend this if you're interested in a story that has a closed school environment with a little bit of a mystery and a slight horror element. There is a little bit of a horror element within the story, but I don't want to give away any specifics about it just because I think it might give away some of the story aspect. But just know that going in. And so, yes, I definitely recommend this one. And then something similar that I had read a couple years ago is Corpse Party, Blood Covered. This has a story that's done by Makoto Kidoin, art by Toshimi Shinomiya. This one's published by Yen Press and is rated older teen. In this series, we have kind of the same element, where we have a group of students. They've just finished their festival and they're all like meeting in a classroom because one of their classmates is leaving for another school. So her family is moving to another area, and so she's transferring to another school. So they're kind of all doing their goodbyes in this classroom. And then all of a sudden, the floor disappears from under them. When they wake up, they realize that they're pretty much spread out. Like, they were all in this one classroom together, but they wake up in different areas of this place. It turns out that they have been transported into the school that was previously on the property of where their high school is located. And this school has a kind of a bad backstory. I believe most of the students are with another student where they are dropped, or they are able to find another student rather quickly after they wake up. And so this story, first of all, has them figuring out where they are and what's going on, and then trying to find a way out and back to where they were. And then as they try to figure that out, they all realize that there is another presence in the school with them. And so this one definitely is more horror. It's got a lot of gore in this story. And there's some fan service, which I think you can tell off the cover of this volume. These are bind-up editions, so you can see that this volume is rather thick compared to A School Frozen in Time, which is much thinner. And so these are, I believe, 2 volumes in one. There are 5 of these bind-ups, so it's a 10-volume series. And I really enjoyed this one as well. There, like I said, is a lot of gore, and there's a really edgy, like, horror element. There's some body horror, and there is, in this particular volume, volume 1, there is a scene of a suicide by hanging. So definitely know that going into this. And yeah. So both of this and the School Frozen in Time that I just talked about are kind of isolated, school can't get out of it without figuring something out type of mysteries. And I really enjoyed both of them. I did read this for the Manga Freakathon a couple years ago, I believe. And so if you want to hear more of my thoughts on this series, you can check out my wrap-up for the Manga Freakathon. I'll link it down in the description box below, as well as my February wrap-up so that you can hear what I thought about A School Frozen in Time. The next series I want to talk to you about is one that I like to recommend to novel readers in general, and that is Bungo Stray Dogs, story by Kafka Asagiri, art by Sango Harukawa. This one is published by Yen Press, rated older teen. In this series, we follow the members of the Armed Detective Agency and their fight against the members of the Port Mafia. They also are a detective agency, so they solve cases as well. So the reason that I like to recommend this series to novel readers in particular is because all of the main characters in this series are based on actual authors. So we have a lot of Japanese authors in the beginning of this series, but later on in the series, you get introduced to other authors that you're probably more aware of, like Ellen Montgomery and Agatha Christie. This is a pretty long-running series. I personally have only read, I think, about 6 volumes. There is also an anime out on this series, to which I have watched the first season of. I do really enjoy this series. All of the members of the Armed Detective Agency have some kind of ability, and so that also makes this series interesting for me as well. So this series actually has a couple other series within it. There's this manga series, there are 2 other manga series, and there is a light novel series. So I would say this is like the main story in this manga series. And then the light novel series, like this is volume 1 of the light novel series. This is Osamu Dazai's entrance exam. And so this particular novel is about a prequel story where we have 2 of the members of the Armed Detective Agency and when they meet, and that story. The light novel series kind of gives some extra stories within the manga series. So within this series. I know it can be a little bit confusing, but that's what that is. And then there is a second manga series, which is Bungo Stray Dogs Beast. This is kind of an alternate story where we have a member of Port Mafia and what would have happened if he had joined the Armed Detective Agency instead. This is a manga series that is based off of volume 6 of the light novels. So it's a manga edition of this story. Then, most recently, coming out in March, there is Bungo Stray Dogs Juan. And this follows the same characters, the Port Mafia, the Armed Detective Agency, but they have been chipified, and it's like a comedy series, so they're up to a bunch of shenanigans. So I'm actually wearing a shirt that is from Bungo Stray Dogs 1, so you can see we have 2 of the characters here, and when I say chipified, you can see they do look slightly different. So they're cuter, and like I said, they'll be up to shenanigans. I do have volume 1 of Bungo Stray Dogs 1 on order, so I'm hoping to have that for my manga haul in March. The next series I want to talk about is probably the one most of you have heard about, especially if you're not manga readers, because a lot of people who are not manga readers do start out with this series, and that is Death Note. This is the all-in-one edition, so the entire series is in this one volume. This has a story by Sugumi Oba, art by Takeshi Obata. This one is published by Viz and is rated older teen. In this one, we follow a high school student named Light Yagami, and he one day stumbles across a notebook. And he picks it up, takes it home, and inside it says that it is a death note. It is basically a notebook where it has a bunch of rules inside, and if you write somebody's name down in it, that person will die. This notebook happened to have been dropped by a Shinigami, or a death god, and Light ends up trying to use the notebook to clean up crime, but he gets a little bit overzealous in his quest to clean up crime, and it gets to be something that the police department kind of becomes aware of and is stumped as to what's going on, because a lot of the criminals are just suddenly dying. And so the police department brings in a specialist named L to try to help to figure out what's going on. And the story follows kind of the fight between L and Light. And I do find it really interesting. This one also has an anime adaptation, which I have watched. I am currently reading this series for the first time with my manga club. The Monochrome Manga Club is the header that I use to talk about that manga club on my channel. And I've just really enjoyed it. This one, you get both perspectives. You get the perspective from the killer and you get a perspective from the police specialist. I have been really enjoying re-experiencing this series. It has been several years since I've watched the anime adaptation. And so when I started reading this with the club, I was surprised to find out that I had remembered quite a bit. I think if you like police procedural type mysteries, you would definitely enjoy this. Also, if you like serial killer mysteries, you might enjoy this as well, because we do get both of those aspects in this series. And it also has that supernatural twist, because we do find the Shinigami as one of the characters who is regularly appearing, because he's connected to said Death Note, and so he has to be with the Death Note pretty much at all times. And so, yeah, I definitely recommend this one. And like I said, it is probably one most people have heard about already, especially if they're not manga readers currently, because it gets talked about a lot. And a lot of people have read this one or are currently reading it. So I definitely recommend that one for mystery readers. And then the last series I want to talk about today is another one that I had recently read. I read this one with our manga club for the February manga club selections, and that is Can't Stop Cursing You. This one has art by Natsuko Uruma, original story by Kensuke Koba. This one is published by Yen Press and is rated older teen. I didn't realize I had so many Yen Press series in this stack, but that's okay. This one is kind of similar to Death Note. So this one follows a curse breaker, who is our character here on the cover. He gets tasked to figure out what's going on at a high school where a lot of the students are dying. And it turns out that one of the students is a curse killer. And so it follows our curse breaker trying to figure out who the curse killer is and try to stop them. All of the curse breakers in this series have some kind of ability. So in this particular volume, we only find out what our curse breaker here, his ability is. They do mention that there are other curse breakers, but I have only read the first volume of this series so far. It is a pretty new series. I believe there are 2 volumes out currently. I've only read this first one. I definitely felt like it was similar to Death Note, just because of the fact that you have somebody who's trying to figure out what's going on, and then you have the person that's actually doing the killing. And the kind of aspect of how the killing is being done kind of gave me the same vibe, even though it is different. But yeah, I think if you've read Death Note, you probably will enjoy Can't Stop Cursing You. And if you haven't read either one, I definitely recommend both of them, because I do find these types of investigative stories interesting. And I think for me, as a mystery reader, that's definitely part of the appeal to these series for me. And so, yeah. Again, this one does give that supernatural aspect, because we're talking about curses. So I'm looking forward to experiencing more in this series and compare it to Death Note as I'm reading it, because I know a lot of people have kind of compared it to Death Note. I definitely felt the similarities when I started reading this volume, but this is more of an episodic series as opposed to Death Note, where it's like an overarching story. So these are all of the manga recommendations I have for mystery readers today. Stay tuned for more manga recommendations for mystery readers coming up soon. If you found any of these series interesting, or if you've read any of them, let me know down in the comments below. But please, no spoilers. And if nothing else, and you would just like to let me know that you are here, if you could like this video and leave me a 4-leaf clover emoji, I would greatly appreciate it, and that would really help me out, and that will do it for me today. So I hope you're all doing great. I hope you're all safe and healthy. And until next time, take care and smile always. Bye.